to help you learn chapter 11. We mapped it. Do you guys remember mapping it all out on the board here together? Really, if you can take that map, you can probably answer the questions. So even today alone, we talked about ultraviolet radiation and physical, and then we talked about chemical. So that chapter was about the three methods: physical in the form of heat or radiation, and then chemical. And we gave you a very specific map of what you needed to know. Do you have any questions about any of that map that we created? We drew it all out. You guys put it on the board to test your learning. Does anyone have a copy of it or need a copy of it that they don't have? Make sure you're sharing with your peers, because we put a lot of work into making that for you. All right, 30. So let's go back and let me give you some specifics on chapter 11. I'm gonna get myself a note page to write. Oh, here I have it. To write what I want to eliminate. Let's make sure you guys understand some of the terminology. So we started off chapter 11 discussing concepts of disinfection versus sterilization. Can you define each of those for me? We used a lot of examples, and even sometimes there was 2 or more meanings to those terms. So we'll definitely say you'll probably encounter 2 to 4 questions, because some of these are just terminology on like the terms associated with it, but I see 2 questions right off the bat. What is the shortest amount of time required to kill all microbes? Remember it? From temperature? Shortest amount of time was the, come on Alexis, you knew this one. Thermal death point. And what was the lowest temperature required? No, so the time was thermal death time, and then the thermal death point was the temperature, right? You guys remember some of those? What type of microbial forms have the highest resistance? You guys remember that chart where we had all the different ones with different levels of resistance? Okay, make sure you guys can pick off that chart, right? So knowing which ones die first versus last, make sure you know that chart. I see a question right here about it. So I'm giving you that one. You know that question will be on there. And then we look at the different types of chemicals, right? So we had surfactants as an example, like soaps. And then you guys were given specific chemicals under the different classes to know about, rather than having to know about all of them. So make sure you go back to your chart. Nothing will be quizzed outside of that chart, right? Where you were given specific chemicals. The difference between the 2 types of heat could be asked. And then even filtration could be asked. What's the difference between microbial death and what is that called? Versus microbial holding pattern. Remember? When it doesn't die, but it's just put into bactericidal versus bacteriostatic. Cool, so you guys are remembering some of that. All right, so that was chapter 11. Now I'm not testing you out of chapter 12. I'm not testing you out of chapter 12. Do I want you to know stuff in chapter 12? Of course, but I'm not testing you out of chapter 12. So now we jump to chapter 13. When I think about chapter 13, it's all about what we learned about last class, and we revisited those concepts together, didn't we? Just yesterday, we revisited them. What did we do yesterday? What did you start our day with yesterday? The chain of infection yesterday. Okay, so we talked about in chapter 13, the human as a host. And we went through in chapter 13 talking about what you have. It starts off talking about your microbiome, so you guys should know what that is, especially if we watch the whole video. And then we called it the process of infection, right? So you have individuals that have different levels of immune system. We talked about individuals being, or pathogens being true pathogens versus opportunistic pathogens. That would definitely be something. We mentioned infectious dose and virulence. Remember that? Then we went through portal of entry, attachment, surviving host defense, causing disease, exiting host. You remember yesterday's table we put up? Can you draw that? Maybe, not so much. Yeah, the chain of infection. We talked about different types of routes of transmission. So the questions will all come from what I've just mentioned. If it's something that lives on you versus something that you encounter brand new, we talked about the different types of infectious disease. There's so many choices. All right, and then finally, we get back to where we were starting with chapter 14. And chapter 14 was which types of immune system? What type of immunity did we talk about in chapter 14, guys?
Adaptive.
What's that?
Adaptive.
Chapter 14, we talked about
The lines of
not adaptive, the other one,
innate.
innate. Okay, so chapter 14, we talked about first and second line defense. And we went through and we pulled up figure, I'm going here, guys, figure 14.1. So I would expect you to be able to know figure 14.1. And then we went through and we briefly discussed the anatomy of the lymphatic system. And then 14.11 is going to cover the hematopoiesis and the formation of the cells. And then we today went back through second line of defense, right? So today we went through, we could definitely expect one question off of the phagocytosis and maybe one question about the steps of inflammation. And then if it's a question on antimicrobial proteins, it's probably more a pick it off the list question than asking you the direct roles of them, but you should generally know interferons associated with viral infection, complement the formation of the macachac. You guys were given some coloring sheets. Those will reinforce all of that. So I recommend that you guys take those coloring sheets and use them over the course of the week while you're studying too, okay? Quizzes, you haven't been doing the most amazing in this class. I don't know if it's distraction, but as a whole, the collective class hasn't scored as awesome. There's been some